Hey guys, I'm here with a very interesting guest today, Sunder. Sunder and I have known each other for 12 years?
12 years.
12 years now. Sunder was my co-conspirator in making the Infosys brand big when we were sitting at Infosys. And Sunder comes with a very special expertise on a field that I want to talk about a little bit more. We've all heard about how to create traction without spending too much money, and one of those things that you do to create that traction is focus on something called influencer marketing, which is basically looking at the analysts and other influencers that can have a viewpoint on how your consumer thinks and try and create the brand and the presence and hence the sales pipelines through that route. And Sundar, without further ado, I just want to get into what is this thing about influencer marketing and why is it so important in our services business?
Well, it's not just services. It could be services, it could be technology, it could be any company that sells to another business. And probably you can extend it to consumers, but I will stay focused on the B2B space. A business buyer looks for second opinion. That second opinion can come from different sources. You often associate influencers with industry analysts, the likes of Gartner or Forrester. You also associate them in the outsourcing world with third-party advisors like TPI and Everest. But it's really the second opinion that a B2B buyer needs. And how do you manage that second opinion? And that's what makes influencer marketing important, is that a B2B buyer, a large value B2B buyer will not want to put their buying decision, their personal decision at risk without getting that second opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's the second opinion that matters enormously, right? Mm-hmm. So if that is so important, so what kind of benefits has it brought to organizations? You don't need to be specific about any organizations you work for, but you can talk about, what is the value it actually has? Is it quantifiable?
It's not very easily quantifiable, but put an effort to it and almost everything can be quantified. Mm-hmm. You have to get into understanding how the influence is happening and then measure the touch points of where the influence is happening, and you can put some good proxy indicators to quantify the impacts of influence.
A name of it?
So, if you're a fledgling company, you really are not looking at how often you get selected. It's often the fact that an influencer knows about you and puts you on a shortlist is a big win for you, because you're not top of mind recall. If you're a very established brand, it's very different. You are more often than not going to be asked to bid. Mm-hmm. Is the influencer taking you out of shortlist because they know where you're a good fit, where you're not a good fit? They're actually taking you out of shortlist because it's a waste of time for you to chase that deal. It's actually a good influence from them. They're saving you time and money. If you're taking you out of shortlist on deals, they don't think you're good enough, that's a problem. So you need to understand influence, because if you measure influence simply by how many deals they influence positively, you may not be measuring the whole thing. Or how many leads they brought to the table, were they the right leads? You need to be able to understand influence. So if a sourcing advisor keeps bringing you in because they want an alternate option and to make it competitive, but your probability of winning is always going to be low, mm-hmm. then they're using you. How does it benefit you? So if you just measure it by the number of opportunities they're bringing to the table, you may think you're doing a great job, but mm-hmm. you're wasting a lot of sales and marketing bandwidth downstream in that whole process.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, what you measure is very important in this very clearly, as you said. What other things should an organization be looking at when they are starting an influencer marketing, when they are looking to expand their influencer marketing footprint?
Well, something I would personally think it's not just influencer marketing, but any marketing. I go by first principles. Don't follow templates. They are a way of almost not thinking and an excuse for not thinking. So understand where and how influence is happening. If you're a startup and if you're looking for an exit strategy or to be sold, there's influence happening. That's no different from another B2B transaction. And you need to do influencer marketing in a very different context with a very different set of stakeholders than if you're a B2B company trying to sell. Mm-hmm. So that's just to give you an example. So very similarly, depending on what product, what markets you're selling to, think about who are the influencers to your buyer. So if you're selling in an immature market, let's say India, mm-hmm. the prevalence of established advisory firms may be very different, mm-hmm. and who they are will be very different. It could be academics, It could be an academician sitting in IIT Bombay that's influencing a decision, a politician, if it's a public sector deal, a politician who's overseeing that committee could be an influencer. So if the moment you map influencer to analyst relations, that's the first mistake. That's thinking like a template. Think about influencers. Don't think about functional roles and kind of just limit yourself to functional roles.
Great. I think that's a great, guiding principle as it were. So, in terms of this entire influencer marketing role, how does it map to the other channels of marketing? What is the influence that influence marketing has on other channels? Content.
So, again, I'll say with influencers, how does influence happen? So, influence happens because there's someone who's commenting about you or your space. He could be talking about your space being dead, nothing about you as a company, which may dissuade companies from buying your technology or offering. So you need to manage that so that that soundbite goes away. So 10 years ago, if people were talking about offshore being high risk, you needed to manage offshore to be not high risk so that people would buy offshore services. Today, if someone says that cloud is not to be adopted, if you're a company in the cloud space, you need to manage that influencer if he or she is influential enough to change their opinion. And that opinion often goes out through the media. So it's the public opinion of opinion makers matter. You also need to manage the influence at a deal level, at a transaction level, which would be more about where they get involved in shortlisting, in down selection, etc. So there, the first half, you need to work very closely with what I would again traditionally call media relations, which again is a templated view, but in today's world, where does media relations end, where does blogger relations start, and where does influencer relations continue? I really don't see any hard border. And all this can happen at an event, can happen online. So rather than looking at each of these steps, you need expertise in each of these areas, and you have specialists in each of these areas, and that's a way to get work done. But that's not a way to think about marketing or to drive influencer relations as one marketing function and something else and look at interplay. You have to think strategically across these boundaries.
Excellent. So I think that's a very clear viewpoint. Obviously, it's collaborated, folks, and you'll have to take my word for it. But the fact that Infosys has done a fantastic role in influencer marketing as a guiding principle, so you're getting some serious insights from our expert practitioner in this space. Thank you very much, Sunder. Really appreciate the insights. Cheers.